Welcome to my channel. This is Scary Things People Have Experienced, Part 41. All the stories are true, and some are so terrifying they're still investigating. And as always, I'll go first. This happened to me when I was 22. I'd just graduated from college, and I was taking whatever job I could find to try and make ends meet. One day I got an email from someone I went to college with. I'll call him Richard. Richard said his golden retriever, Buddy, couldn't be left alone. He needed someone to watch him while he went on a business trip. He described the dog as super friendly, and if she liked dogs, he would pay really well. I loved dogs, so I asked how much. He replied, as much as you want. Let's say $150 a night. I instantly agreed. Richard messaged me his address and I headed over. His house sat on the edge of town, hidden in the woods. It was big and beautiful, but kind of outdated. The beige carpets, the old patterned curtains. You get the picture. Richard showed me around. He showed me how to care for Buddy, where the spare keys were. He told me I could use the fridge and gave me the downstairs guest bedroom, the most comfortable room in the house, he said. He also said he'd be gone for 3 days, returning on Sunday evening, but he gave me his number and told me to call him if I needed anything. The first 2 nights were totally normal. We'd watch TV, go for evening walks, and Buddy would curl up at my feet as I slept. But on the 3rd night, everything changed. I was lying in bed scrolling through my phone when I noticed something on the nightstand. There was a black alarm clock. It looked sleek and modern, but the rest of the room was clearly outdated. I frowned and looked closer. Above the glowing numbers, there was a small hole, perfect for a lens, and when I looked through it, I saw that it was pointing straight at the bed. My heart pounded. I'd recently read about hidden cameras, and this one seemed to be watching me. I picked up the clock, which was heavier than it should be. I felt around and heard a faint humming sound, and then Buddy growled. He got off his bed and fixed his eyes on the door. Just then, click, a door shut somewhere deep inside the house. I knew Richard wasn't supposed to be back until Sunday, but this was only Wednesday night. I froze. My blood turned to ice. I locked the bedroom door just as footsteps began. They were slow and heavy, pressing into the carpet, and they were coming closer. Finally, they stopped right outside the door. Then I heard his voice. It was calm, but breathless. I forgot something. Please open the door. I didn't respond. Silence. Then his tone changed. It became smooth and reassuring. It's not what you think. It's just a motion sensor for the dog. Please come out. We can talk like adults. Still, I didn't say a word. The second he noticed I wasn't opening the door, his voice snapped into a terrifying rage. He slammed against the wood, opened the door. Now the door rattled. Buddy barked and hurled himself at the door. Richard's fury grew louder. I backed away from the door and ran to the window. It was slightly ajar. I pushed it open and climbed through. I fell hard onto the grass and ran as fast as I could. Through the yard, down the gravel drive and onto the main road. I didn't stop running until I reached my mom's house. I called her, gasping and crying. When she arrived, I was still hiding behind the mailboxes, still staring at the dark house in the woods. That night, I slept in my mom's spare bedroom. I was too afraid to go home. The next morning I blocked Richard's number, called a lawyer, but without the clock or any recording, there was nothing they could do. Richard could claim it was just a sensor. For weeks, I couldn't sleep. I woke up in the middle of the night convinced I was being watched. I checked every clock, every smoke detector, every picture frame on the wall, and the thought that still makes my blood run cold today. What if Richard had been inside the house the entire time, watching me through that hidden camera? That was my story. Now it's time for bed. And remember, I won't be reading your stories tonight. Instead, I'm taking a break from reading your stories to investigate my own terrifying experience.
Al was 22 years old. He had just finished university and moved to a city where he hoped to get a good job, until he found a permanent position. He did several odd jobs around town, which paid poorly, but were enough for him to scrape by. He didn't know anyone in the city, so he spent most of his free time exploring parks and walking around the waterfront, hoping to make friends. But the weeks passed and John started feeling lonely. One day he found a Facebook group for housing in his city. As he scrolled through the posts, he saw one listing a spare room in a 2-bedroom apartment. John contacted the person and arranged to meet up and check out the room. It was small, sparsely furnished, and pretty dull, but it was a roof over his head and somewhere to live. He agreed to rent it and sign the lease. The person who had rented the apartment to them was a woman named Linda. She showed them the utilities and explained how everything worked. But she was busy and had to leave quickly after dropping off the key. So John and James were left to settle in on their own. As soon as Linda left, James unpacked his stuff. "So you're my roommate," he said. "Nice to meet you." "My name's James." "Hi, I'm John." James nodded politely and went back to organizing his things. John noticed that James was a little awkward, and that he talked very little. He also seemed very quiet and polite, and there was something about him that seemed a bit off-putting. But John shrugged it off and figured that he'd get used to his roommate in time. In the meantime, John needed to find a job. He applied for many positions, but didn't hear back. So he took some smaller jobs, like dog walking and yard work, which paid poorly but kept food on the table. James, on the other hand, always seemed to have money, although he never discussed his finances. He would come home late and leave early, so John didn't see much of him. When they did cross paths, James was either quiet or awkwardly polite. A few weeks passed and John was starting to worry. He didn't like being poor, but now he was starting to dislike his roommate too. There was something about him that made John feel uneasy, but he couldn't put his finger on it. Then, one Saturday morning, John noticed something strange. He was cleaning his room when he looked toward his closet. The door was hanging wide open, and it had been closed when he went to bed the night before. He shrugged it off, assuming that it had blown open, and went back to cleaning. Later that day, John was sitting at his desk working when he noticed something else. His chair had been turned toward his bed. He hadn't moved it himself, and he knew that James wouldn't have done it because he barely ever entered John's room. Confused, John stood up and walked over to the closet. Again, he noticed something strange. There was a small black dot on the wall. At first, John thought it was a nail, but as he got closer, he realized it was a wireless camera. It was small and black and looked inconspicuous. It was taped in place and pointed directly at his bed. He felt a chill run down his spine. Someone had been watching him while he slept. John ripped the camera down and checked if it had a memory card. It did not. He panicked, wondering what had been recorded and how long the camera had been there. His thoughts raced as he imagined the most intimate moments of his life being watched without his consent. He decided to confront James that night. He knocked on James's door and walked in. The room was filthy and cluttered, with clothes, dishes, and books piled everywhere. John struggled to find James, calling out to him. Finally, he found him in a corner room family and asked him what he was doing. James jumped and turned around. "You scared me," he said. "What are you doing in my room? Why did you put a camera in my room?" James's face remained blank. "What camera? Don't play stupid games with me. No, you put that camera in my room to spy on me." James finally showed emotion, a flash of anger. "How dare you accuse me of such a thing? You have no proof. Maybe you should be more careful about who you trust." He turned away, his shoulder facing John. John wanted to argue, but he knew it would be pointless. James clearly wasn't going to cooperate, so he left and went to his own room. That night, John couldn't sleep. The camera was gone, but it didn't make him feel any safer. He tossed and turned, thinking about the camera and wondering what James was hiding. He imagined James sitting in the next room, watching him with a creepy smile on his face. Determined to get to the bottom of this, John came up with a plan. The next day, he went to an electronics store and bought a hidden camera. He attached it to his nightstand drawer and hid it well. Then he waited. The first 2 nights passed without incident, but on the third night, John was awakened by a soft creak. He opened his eyes slightly and saw James standing over his nightstand. His hands were inside the drawer searching for something. John's heart pounded in his chest. Was James looking for the camera? Had he already discovered John's trap? Suddenly, James straightened up and turned toward the bed. Their eyes met in the darkness. John froze. What should he do? Say something. Turn on the light. James broke the silence. "I know you're awake." His voice was low and raspy. John swallowed hard. "What do you want?" "I need you to give me back what you took from me." "Oh, I don't know what you're talking about." "Oh, I know you're lying." "You know what I want. Just give it back, and this will all be over." John was confused. What was he supposed to give James back? He racked his brain trying to figure it out, but nothing came to mind. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said finally. "If you want it that badly, I guess you'll have to find it yourself." John sat up in bed and stared at James. James's face twisted in anger. "You're making a big mistake," he hissed. "You don't know who you're messing with." He turned and stalked out of the room. John felt a surge of adrenaline. Was James planning to hurt him? Was that why he had been spying on him? John didn't know what to think. In the end, John never did find out what James was up to. One night, John heard the slow, deliberate footsteps coming from the other side of the apartment wall. They stopped right outside his door. John froze, his heart pounding in his chest. He listened intently. A slight creaking sound echoed from the other side, as if someone had pressed their ear against the wood. John held his breath, unable to move or make a sound. He felt a cold dread wash over him. Slowly, the footsteps began to recede, fading away into the silence. John remained motionless, his body tense until the sounds in the apartment grew quiet once more. And he was left in the suffocating stillness of his room, wondering what lurked beyond the walls and if he would ever find out. That horrifying tale was sent to me by a friend, so I'd like to thank them for that and ask you to also send me your scary stories. For a while, we're going to tell a lot of scary stories, so please subscribe. His name was David. His girlfriend was Maya. In late September, they booked an Airbnb for a few days while visiting Maya's sister in a small town about 3 hours from home. David chose the place for several reasons. It was cheap, close to Maya's sister's house, had good reviews. And in the photos, it looked like something out of a fairy tale. A 2-story wooden cabin with a wraparound porch. Warm yellow light glowing from the living room and polished hardwood floors. There was one small detail in the listing that David barely noticed. Basement storage, off limits to guests. It didn't seem unusual. Many hosts locked away personal belongings. But the moment they arrived, David regretted it. The house looked far older than in the photos. It stood isolated, surrounded by dark forest, with a winding, empty road leading in. In sight, there was only one other house far in the distance. The host was waiting on the porch. His name was Howard. Late 50s, tall but slightly hunched, thinning gray hair combed neatly. He wore a tucked-in flannel shirt and jeans, everything a little too tidy. Howard smiled, but the smile never reached his eyes. When he shook David's hand, he held it a moment too long. His voice was friendly, but every word carried a faint undertone of warning. Howard gave them a tour. The hallway smelled dusty, mixed with something faintly sweet, like candle wax, though no candles were in sight. The living room had an old sofa facing an ancient TV. The kitchen was clean, but outdated. Upstairs, the single bedroom had a large bed beneath a ceiling fan next to a wooden wardrobe with a small mirror attached. Back downstairs, Howard stopped before a door near the kitchen. A heavy padlock hung on it. He tapped the lock and said, this time without smiling, "This door stays locked. It's where I keep my things. You don't need to go down there." Without waiting for a reply, he showed them the towels, wished them a pleasant stay, and left. The first night passed quietly, too quietly. No cars, no voices. Just a thick, suffocating silence. Around midnight, David heard a faint thud from below. He froze, listening. The sound didn't repeat. He told himself it was just the old house settling. The next day they visited town, had lunch with Maya's sister, and returned late. That night, around 2 a.m., David got up to use the bathroom. On the stairs, he stopped cold. From the basement came a sound, like something heavy being dragged slowly across the floor, a scraping noise. It lasted a few seconds, stopped, then started again. His pulse quickened. Maybe Howard had returned? But Howard had clearly said he wouldn't be back during their stay. David listened harder. The noise ceased. When he returned, Maya was awake. "Shh, you heard it too, didn't you?" The third night was worse. 2:30 a.m. footsteps. 4, 5 steps. Pause. 3 more. Pause. Each pause was long, as if someone were listening, waiting, checking if anyone upstairs was awake. Maya clutched his arm, trembling. "I can hear breathing." Between the steps, they lay frozen until morning. By daylight, David checked the basement door, still locked. But when he leaned close, a damp, sour odor seeped through the cracks. The fourth night broke them. Maya was brushing her hair when she suddenly stopped, staring at the smoke detector above the bed. "David, does that look strange to you?" He climbed up on a chair. In the center of the smoke detector was a tiny black dot, glinting like glass. A chill ran down his spine. He pulled the detector off the ceiling. Inside was a hidden camera, its green light blinking. Maya went pale. David searched the room further and found another tiny hole near the wardrobe mirror. Inside, another lens. Both cameras pointed directly at the bed. They stuffed their belongings into bags and fled to the nearest gas station, where they called the police. 2 officers accompanied them back to the house. They collected the cameras, memory cards, and recording equipment. David and Maya explained everything, including the noises from the basement. When they showed the officers the basement door, their blood ran cold. The lock was gone. The door stood ajar. Pitch black inside. The officers descended. Seconds later, a shout erupted from below. The sounds of a struggle echoed up, and a name, Howard. The host, the man who had locked the door, who had sworn they were never to go down there, was found hiding inside a cabinet in the basement. In the cabinet was a small monitor wired to the hidden cameras throughout the house. Howard was handcuffed on the spot, charged with trespassing and illegal surveillance. David and Maya didn't have to testify, only file statements. Airbnb offered them a discount voucher as an apology. But what good is a voucher against something like that? Since then, neither of them has ever rented an Airbnb again. Hotels, at least, have doors that actually lock. Still, sometimes David wakes in the middle of the night, hearing that old sound in his head, the slow dragging steps from the basement.